have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work, or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe. Our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad.
Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome back to the Wake Up Show. Good to see you all. Thanks for joining. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, where you're at. Sometimes I forget that people from all over the world are tuning in, so surely not the morning for many of you, but thank you for being here regardless. And today we are going to jump into this new topic on education and the education system. It's related to a video I'm working on right now, and I wanted to really dive deeper into this particular topic that I just use as support in the video. This idea of changing education, Elon Musk's Doge as he's dismantling society. And all of our institutions and industries to build back better, as it were. And I touch on the education in light of AI and the digitization and virtualization of classical, or should we say traditional, public education, as I personally believe Elon Musk and the rest of the futurists are attempting to move society and humanity into a device-based, screen-based, virtuality-based system of learning, being, and doing. And his whole idea about fixing the flawed and corrupt education system to me is just a ploy to standardize his own methods, and not to say they're his only. This is a type of transhumanist agenda that incorporates learning as well as everything else from medicine and public health and all of that. So for me, I think this is just another one of his opportunities to assist in this great transition, this great work of Satan. But I really wanted to go in deeper on just the education alone, and I really wasn't able to do that in this video. So I thought it'd be a great topic to cover on this show and really do some history, go a little deeper into it. And I found this clip that's going viral right now. And it's a pretty old clip. I think it's at least 5 years old. Yeah, shout out to Rob Tick. Good to see you, bro. Digital Slavery, exactly. King Sir the Boss, good to see you. And everyone else in the chat, mods and viewers included, thank you all for being here. But exactly, digital slavery, whether it's health, education, labor force, work, regardless, right? They're all being stuffed under this great big umbrella called efficiency. And by the way, we're in Valencia today, Valencia, Spain. beautiful place. I've never been to Spain. It's definitely somewhere I'd like to visit at some point. But we're just taking a little stroll today as we dig in to this topic. And I found a really interesting clip that's going viral. As I said, it's a little old, so it isn't as if it was created because of this new revolution we're under now, especially education wise. I also find it interesting that education also took a major blow during the COVID scenario and quarantine and getting people to do this screen education, screen learning, and all of that. So that was the first blow. And it isn't to say that there aren't serious problems with education. I want to go into that. I want to talk about the serious problems of education, look at some of the history, Rockefeller, Ford Foundation, and of course the Prussian model. All right, and juxtapose that with, say, classical education, scholasticism, etc., of the medieval times that seem to have a better grasp on what education should actually be. And then, of course, I'm going to have my angle on all of this that's going to focus on the Christian worldview and essentially the family and how education, as well as the family and many other social structures, have been deconstructed due to this confluence of progress, so-called progressivism, but also technological development. And this is what we are seeing, in my view, right now with me, Elon Musk, is he's taking these concepts of progress from the transhumanist view. As far as I'm concerned, it's the transhumanist view of progress, which states all we need is more technology and humanity, so-called, will be better. Taking this idea of progress and mixing it with his technological solutions and aiming it at literally every institution and industry possible. So I found this clip. People are passing it around, and I find it interesting because it's not that what the clip is saying isn't necessarily true. I think it's short-sighted, and I want to dig into it a little bit today. Tomorrow, we're going to focus specifically on the historical events of Rockefeller, Ford, as well as the Prussian model. Today, we're going to dig into this clip, and I want to cover some of the more social aspects of it. And yes, homeschooling, I think, well, it's wild. It's bittersweet because part of it's great. Like, this is making homeschool look so much more important and valuable. And it's really giving us an opportunity to standardize and enculturate a tradition of homeschooling children, because everyone is sick and tired of these education systems, but it takes a certain lifestyle to be able to homeschool your children. Everyone can't do that. Actually, I'd say most people can't, due to work, and which we're going to talk about, work and just many other life situations and scheduling, and even teaching itself isn't for everyone. It takes a level of discipline, patience, right? It takes a level of knowledge. You have to know how to teach, and I think we've lost this over these last couple generations. You would learn. Well, let me not go into that part yet because we're going to save that. Anyhow, yes. So this clip, everyone's passing it around, and to me, it's fascinating because it's going somewhat viral on Twitter, of course, because Elon Musk wants to take over the education system. Here, by the way, we have this here. Let me pull this up. This article here. Inside Doge's takeover of the education department. I don't know if you guys seen this video. This happened several weeks ago. I didn't really get to cover it. And to me, it looks like really good propaganda, really stoking the flame of this education war we're getting ready to go through between Musk and the traditional public education system. So Democratic members of Congress denied entry to the Department of Education. This was pretty viral at one point, actually, when it happened.
I've sent the Assistant Secretary a letter
Sorry,
alerting her that we would be here today. And
we're coming in. Who are you?
You're not coming in.
Who are you?
who under whose orders?
Who are you? Who are you?
Who are you, sir?
Do you have business here?
Yes. I've sent the Assistant Secretary a letter alerting her that we would be here today, and we've asked her for a meeting.
Yeah, I don't know that that's been accepted, so until that's accepted.
Who are you?
What do you have? And what do you do here?
What do you do
I
here?
have security responsibility.
Get out of the way. We pay for your
Get out of the way.
We pay you.
Please stand aside, sir.
I'm not standing aside.
Why not?
Because my role is to make sure that...
What authority do you have to block members of Congress from the oversight? We all have oversight responsibilities. By what authority can you deny members of Congress their oversight role?
You don't have a business reason to be here.
You do not have authority, sir. You do not have authority.
This man here, who is a federal
goodness, this
employee,
woman.
he told us.
No, he's not.
Are you a federal employee? No. Huh?
Yes.
No, he said he's a federal employee. We pay him. We raise money to make sure that we have a Department of Education. Everybody that's hired at the Department of Education are here because we pay for them to be here. He's standing here today blocking the door, and he can't give us a good reason why he's blocking this door.
Make sure they see right here. All access entrance.
Goodness. So I didn't cover that because I wasn't planning on talking about the education thing just yet. And this is kind of the beginning of this whole op that we're getting ready to see. There's so many things Doge is doing right now. There's so much going on. I have a whole lot to say about this education situation, and it's just starting to build up. So I didn't cover this, but this was pretty viral. At least this clip was creating this war, right? This dialectic between the traditional public education or the education department and this new Doge program, the transition, right? The old system and bringing in the new system. Now, the old system is corrupt. It's always been. We're going to nail that to the wall today. But we have to consider some things, right? We have to consider some things. So let's just jump into this clip, and we're going to watch it all the way through. It's a little long. It's 7 minutes. That might not be that long for some, but that's a little long for a clip. 7 minutes, 28 seconds. Forgive me for the music. I didn't put this music on here. It's a bit over the top, but what he's saying, I think, is really good. People are loving this, and I'm sure most would agree, but it's missing a lot of parts, and I think it's being pushed on purpose. Just like everything else, guys. They're saying, we're going to fix the corruption. We're going to go for the big pharma. We're going to do all these things that been a problem for a very long time, that we're all aware of, that we've been complaining about for years, and now all of a sudden they want to fix everything. Now all of a sudden they want to have our back. Now all of a sudden you want to talk about the education system is corrupt and it just wants to design workers and build a labor force and all of that. All of the sudden, no, I'm not buying that for a minute. Not for a second. Now, I see it going viral on Twitter, of course, because what does Elon Musk want to do? He wants to get rid of the old education system so he could put everybody in front of robots and screens and AI. So it makes perfect sense why he's letting this clip go viral, even though there's a whole lot of truth in it. Okay, at least that's my view. And let's break this thing down. It's called, What Are Schools For? What are schools for? All right, let's check it out.
What is school for? Feel free to call me slow, but I spent 16 years going to school, and I still don't know. When I finished, I didn't know how to do my own taxes, purchase a home, or apply for a loan. I didn't know a thing about investments, building credit, or getting a job. I graduated at the top of my class, and what did I have? This fancy diploma to sit at home with my mom. But luckily, they did teach me some important skills like factoring trinomials and how mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I'm so happy I remember the Pythagorean theorem, because it helped me a lot. Okay, I'm lying. Let me stop. because all the stuff they taught me, truthfully, I forgot. Mom, remember when you would ask me, what did you learn in school today? And I would say, nothing much. I wasn't being modest. The truth about it, Mom, is I had already forgotten. And it's not just me. Millions of students sing the same song. How many of you guys avoid eye contact with the teacher to try not to get caught upon? Afraid to raise your hand for fear of being wrong, which proves that school isn't an environment for learning or building up the intellect. It's just a game you play for grades and how many A's you can collect. But I guess what do you expect when the most commonly asked question in class is this gonna be on the test? Is this gonna be on the test? See, if school put learning instead of testing and memorizing as the top standard, then the letter F would not stand for failure. It would stand for find another answer. And if school was really interested in our personal and academic success, students would wake up later, have more freedom, and homework a lot less. And that's not my opinion. This conclusion has been scientifically tested and proven. And any teacher that doesn't believe me, feel free to check my works cited page to inspect. Oh, and I did it in MLA format because I know that's all you will accept. See, students would get more benefit from an extra hour of sleep than putting them through the torture of an extra essay, reading 150 pages, doing problems 1 through 60 on the worksheet, and having 3 projects due by the end of the week. Not only is it pointless pain, but it's also dim-witted, because we get so much work, but they don't teach the time management skills to deal with it. See, in school, we are controlled by bells. We have to learn in rooms with the feng shui of a prison cell. We have to ask permission to relieve bodily functions, but not before the teacher asks a million questions like, why didn't you go before class? I'm sorry, my bladder is kind of on its own schedule and it's not always timely. See, teachers always say, use your time wisely. But that never made sense to me. Because these 6 cruel hours of our lives we call school might literally be the worst use of time management ever in history. Think about it. The traditional teaching method is foolish. No, it's useless, multiplied by the square root of stupid. What they do is they cram information in your head, force feeding you, and then you throw it up on the test. That's not education. That's bulimia. And the more bulimic you are, the better you will do on their assessments. So it's no wonder why so many students graduate mentally and emotionally anorexic. See, school teaches you how to memorize dots. True education should teach you how to connect them. True education teaches you how to catch a fish. School teaches you, yeah, you caught the fish, but you didn't show your work, so it doesn't count. Throw it back. I'm just asking, what is school for? It's not education. That's just not true. If you still think that, you might be sniffing glue. See, the word education comes from the Latin root educe, meaning bring out, i.e. bring the gifts out of a person and make them viable. But school doesn't bring out much. It just stuffs more facts inside of you. Now, some of that stuff is justifiable. We need reading, writing, and some arithmetic. That's fair. But are you telling me metamorphic and igneous rocks are more important than self-care? If suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death of ages 10 to 24, and Harvard studies suggest the biggest predictor for success is self-control and emotional health, then why the heck aren't we taught how to handle stress, bullies, or rejection? How about anxiety or depression? You know, skills we need for our entire lives. Bro, I don't even know how to cook. I'm honestly surprised I'm still alive. But hey, at least I can name all the battles that happened in the Civil War. Seriously, what is school for? Some say you need it to be successful, and that's something we do not doubt. But do you own a MacBook or iPhone? Did you know they both were created by a dropout? Are you watching this video on Facebook or YouTube? Doesn't matter which you choose, they both were created by dropouts. Ever use Snapchat, WhatsApp, shopped at Whole Foods? Well, thank a dropout. Does your home furniture come from IKEA? Okay, don't get the wrong idea. He was not a dropout. Don't be a fool. I mean, how could he drop out? Ingvar Kamprad, founder of IKEA, never even went to school. I know what you're thinking. He's just picking and choosing. There's millions who didn't go to school that aren't successful. Who is he fooling? And you're right. But open your history books and start perusing. You'll find the very people we idolize in school never really had formal and/or secondary schooling. I'm talking George Washington, Abe Lincoln. America's best presidents had 0 school between them. Ben Franklin, Thomas Edison, shall I proceed? Ernest Hemingway, Mark Twain, Teddy Roosevelt, Margaret Mead. Now please, I'm not saying drop out, because some schools are great and many teachers are rare treasures. I'm saying that there's a difference between people who are smart and people who score better. I'm saying that your future is something that no test will ever measure. Even if that test begins in 3 letters like SAT, ACT, it's BS if they say those determine your LIFE. No, your destiny is in your hands. You must shape it to be great. So don't expect school to open doors, because it's more likely to slam them in your face. Sometimes I wonder about all the dreams lost in school and how much potential goes to waste. If it wasn't for music and YouTube, then I would have been just another lost case. Everybody watching this, please, close your eyes. Imagine a child sitting in the back of some teacher's class in some town. He never raises his hand, he fails most of his classes, but inside of him, there is a passion. And if nurtured and brought out, will lead him to discover the cure for cancer. But you see, I'm afraid that child's gift will never come out. He will never win the Nobel Prize award because in class he was ignored and his worth was judged only by his scores. So teachers, principals, parents, advisors, and students, I ask one more time, what is school for?
Yes. Interesting, very interesting clip. I really enjoyed this because I've had some of the same complaints my whole life, and I think it touched on some really strong points. But, and again, this is an older clip, so it's not like it was produced now for what we're going through. If it was produced to say now, if this was a fresh, brand new thing, I'd see it as clear propaganda, but it's being used as propaganda regardless, even though there's a lot of truth in this. Aside from some of the campiness of it, right? The music and everything. And it's just, it comes across a little overproduced, obviously. But the points stand, but they're flawed positions as well. And I want to try to break down some of this because it's extremely flawed in certain ways and certain points made. All right, so I'm going to really dissect this thing. We're just going to cover, I'd say, some major points today. We'll continue tomorrow, and this will probably even go into next week because there's so much to be said about this, considering the history of education now, and where they want education to go. This is a very, very important clip considering those things. And what I really find interesting is how so much truth can still have so many lies within. It's really paradoxical, I'd say. So let me pull some things up here and let's get into this. So I had this image here. This guy, apparently this is the dude that's getting ready to like change the world, and he's going for education. He wants to build robots, in my view. He doesn't want people to learn. You know, he doesn't want people to actually be educated, so-called, in its true sense. He wants to create robots. So I don't care what he says about education, and I have tons of clips of him speaking on education that I use in this video that I'll be posting pretty soon on the main channel. But it's unfortunate. Again, taking advantage, exploiting the vulnerable. We are vulnerable. We have a broken education system. It has damaged generations. Right? It's hard to find people who enjoyed school. We all went through those things. A lot of the stuff that clip was saying is true. We all dealt with that. We all questioned these things. But it isn't to say school is all bad either. So let's look at some of these things. Let's try to be nuanced in the approach. Let me pull this up. I want to give you guys my view on what school is for, in my view. And again, this is not exhaustive. We're just beginning to touch on these ideas, step into them in a more nuanced way. I'm not saying this is everything about education, because I'm sure people will come up with many other perspectives, but This is how I'm looking at this, at least for the moment, as we build on this. All right, so Rockefeller education indoctrination system. Yeah, bricks in the wall. Right? Hey, teachers, leave those kids alone. You know, all of that stuff. This has been, when we look at the 21st century education system based on the Prussian model, of course, we can never forget John Dewey, the socialization psychologist slash philosopher, utilitarian, by the way. His ideas have literally built our social fabric when we connect technology, utilitarian philosophy, socialization, and economy. We get this Dewey system. And of course, Rockefeller, the brain and the brawn financial powers behind it all. And there's many more. There's many more involved, but these are some of the major players. Dewey being one of the, I'd say, philosophical kind of forefather of a lot of this, his ideas, right? His view of the student, his view of mankind in light of society and success and where people fit in. This idea of socialization is really a Deweyan concept. And then Rockefeller, of course. So let's go here. What is school for? Okay, so I've broken it down into two major sections. One is societal and cultural. There's a societal and cultural purpose. And then there's a personal purpose. So first, what we're most familiar with is the societal and cultural. So one is civilizational infrastructure. In my personal view, school is a civilizational infrastructure. What I mean by that is it's a pillar of society. And of course, it's a major institution. It creates culture. It installs culture. It enculturates the population with worldview, right? A really good concept is materialism or secularism or scientism is enculturated into us through this civilizational infrastructure we call school. We all learn to be materialists. We all learn to be evolutionists through our education system. So it's a pillar of society in that it forms this shared cultural view or worldview. Next is business. School is a business. I think this is probably most important. It's a business. It's a capitalist superstructure. It's a very massive part of the economy, right? It creates careers. It creates business. It creates, careers and profits for major companies. A perfect example is, as just one, is services and materials. The education system provides so many business opportunities for supplies when we think of school supplies, plastics, as an example. When we think of a big food, that supplies the food for all of these schools. And a lot of this stuff is built into the government. A lot of this is, a lot of these things are sanctioned and they become social programs, if you will, because in that they're the public system is supplied by this grand state system. But then also you think of like textbooks, for example, really useless for the most part. The textbook industry is massive. There's a lot of money in there. People have been making tons of money for generations pumping out these damn textbooks that are pretty much useless. You can learn some basics, some surface stuff. But again, it's a business. But then there's another aspect of this business that I think is even more important than, say, the services and materials. It's socialized childcare, right? And this presents schooling as an economic stabilizer or a tool. Yeah, paper's another one. President Zaddy. We can go down a list. All of us been to school. We've been through it. I mean, some of you may have went to private school, but most of us are straight public school kids. And yeah, you can name all types of stuff. All those materials, all those services. That's big business. Right. And then we think of socialized childcare. I'll get into this in a little more deeper soon here. Socialized childcare, it's an economic stabilizer and it's a tool to buttress this business, which creates this type of we can call it mind control, right? But it's enculturation, it's worldview building. But this economic stabilizer it allows parents to work multiple jobs in some cases and have people watch their children 8 hours a day. Interesting how we're at school 8 hours a day and a general work week or general work day is 8 hours. Pretty interesting, isn't it? It is an extended service of childcare. LARPing as education. Now, let's not get too harsh. There are some positives. I've had great teachers in my life that changed my life. And there are good things about education, which we'll get to in a second here. But it's a tool. It's a tool for this overall economic and cultural industry. It keeps the people able to work and stay committed to their corporations that uphold the economy. If they didn't have these schools to watch all of these workers' children 8 hours a day, how would this even work? Right? So there's definitely these are just some major aspects. And then there's the personal. And to me, these things can tend to be positive. Right? And I want to be very nuanced here because school isn't all bad. It's very bad in many ways, but it's a social world development, right? Social world development, group, other peers, youth culture. We learn about youth culture through school. And again, I think we also have to consider the structure of the society. 21st or 20th century society, post-World War II, hyper-industrial industries, economic growth, the commodification of everything, schools of this nature and this shape work perfectly. They fit perfectly in it. Right? They just become another type of commodifying industry. Let's just be real. The education system is just another commodifying industry. And I'm not trying to say like I'm a socialist or a communist because I'm not. But this is just a general structure of any capitalist system. It just is. And I'm not saying I have the solution. You know, there is no real economic solution that people like real economists have been trying to do this for generations. It's just a mixed economy is all we really could come to now. I don't believe going to a fully digital mixed economy is the way to go. Absolutely not. I believe we need to go more decentralized, more localized. We need to shrink down systems and separate based on kind of regional para-economies. I'm talking about we need to go back in that sense. You know how villages operate. Like, we need to really work from that level if we want real freedom or liberty. But again, that's nearly impossible at this point. But it is a solution, and I think it's a viable one. So yeah, social world development, right? We learn about in-group behavior, in-group membership. We learn about the other people. We learn about ourselves through interacting with others. I mean, listen, all of our first girlfriends and boyfriends and best friends and, you know, all of these things we learned in school. Peers, right? Youth culture, popular culture. We learn all of these things in school. Right? So we could rail against it as much as we want, but at the same time, we can't help but realize it shaped our identities in many ways. And there's a lot we should be thankful for in that sense. Right? A lot of fun is had at school too. You know, your in group, your crew, you know, all of these things. They all came and developed in school, especially grade school and high school, and sports. You know, there's a lot of things. And listen, we all had different experiences. I understand some people had horrible experiences in school. So I'm always sensitive to that too. I'm just trying to be a little nuanced with it because I had a lot of fun in school, even though I hated it, as paradoxical as that statement is. I hated school, but I had a lot of fun in certain ways, at certain levels, in certain situations, certain aspects of school I enjoyed. And so an identity, right? Risk. We learn about risk in school. It's risky, making friends, talking to people, interacting, putting yourself out there, being open, forming relationships, trying, right? Putting yourself out there. There's risk involved that's outside of the home and the community or the neighborhood. Right? You're dealing with all kinds of kids from different parts of the neighborhood, or should I say different parts of the city or town. There's diversity, not necessarily always in race, which tends to be the case, but I know some schools are different, but diversity in thought as well. Learning how to act and deal with people. There's individuation, very important. School is what separates you from that, this thing where you're attached to your parents or you're attached to your family in a way that shelters you, keeps you a little isolated. A psychological term, individuation. School helps you socialize, helps you expand in that sense, helps you grow without your parents to hold your hand and to, shape things for you, put you in a situation where you have to make things happen. You have to react to scenarios. You have to find yourself through those interactions. Individuation. School helps individuate. And this is a part of identity development. Your identity isn't just developed in your home, right? It's developed in social situations. And school is a socialization process. I mean, it just is. For all the bad and good that's there. Yeah, lunch and recess. It was the best, right? Shout out to Bari. Good to see you. And, getting on the bus in the morning, bus stop mornings and drop-offs after. I mean, that was so much popped off at the bus stop. I loved riding the bus. It was such a fun experience. It's different these days. The bus situation is a little different these days. A lot of people take their children to school now for safety reasons. I don't even know what that's like. I had me a little walk to get to the bus stop, and I loved it. It was good times. So talents and skills, right? You learn about yourself, your talents, skills you might create, social skills, that is, and sometimes other skills like sports or academic skills you learn in school. Unless you fight, and yeah, there were the fights, yeah. I know some people enjoyed the fights; they were entertaining. Not necessarily if you're in them, but yeah, there definitely was that. And then interests, right? Your interests develop and grow in school, right? This is where your identity is really formed, at least in part, of course, because your family should play a role in that as well as your faith. So this is self, right? So we get youth culture, we get the development of the self, and then we get inspiration and balance. And what I mean by this is the teachers, man. Gym teachers, math teachers, history teachers. They're inspiring when you get a good one. And I had some great ones growing up. I had some that I didn't like too much, of course, but I had some really good teachers, man, that I remember to this day. And it's like they're different from your parents. They're different from your families. So that difference is growth. When you're starting to create these relationships with who were at one point complete strangers until you form, a professional type of relationship with. There's something good about that, I think, socially. And it balances what you learn in the home. At least it should. And what I'm going to get into in a bit here is how it doesn't. And that's the problem. There's no longer this balance between school and home. But ideally, there should be this inspiration and balance. So it's generational learning. You learn about the older generation through your teachers, stories they tell you, how they act, how they behave. You learn a lot. Respect outside of just your home and your parents or your family members. And growth. A lot of growth happens. Or at least can happen. Right? So you get meaning. A new type of meaning. Not necessarily the type you'd get at home or in your community or, in your neighborhood, etc. But in this institution, you can glean meaning. You can develop the self. You can learn and experience and participate in youth culture. Big part of school. So we got to be careful when we rail against it because we might throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And that's very easy to do, especially when we consider the hell and the manipulation that school tends to provide. Now, this is, I think, the most important part. My biggest point I want to make here before we start breaking down this clip. Ooh, I love me some extracurricular clubs. Yes, they were fun, weren't they? Because and again, back to this idea of interest. Oh, that's a good one. Thank you for bringing that up, Erica. Yes, yeah. Here, interests, clubs. Yes, clubs, talents and skills, music club or something, jazz club, whatever. We had a breakdancing club. I used to love that thing. I could practice my skills. I'd meet other B-boys and B-girls that I didn't even know danced, and we come together under a shared interest, right? All part of the identity, all part of developing the self. Absolutely. So there's a lot of things. If we really want to get granular with it, we could discover that there's a whole lot of stuff going on here that we shouldn't forget. But there's a big problem here with school and the way it's designed and how it functions. And I believe this is it here. Let me pull this up here. Boom. Okay. Aside from structural, academic, and historical problems within education, which is clear, we're all aware of them. The clip just kind of laid them out. A key factor is that it has subsumed many important duties and roles of the familial dynamic. I don't know if this is mentioned enough, and this is something I've always harped on. It's something I've always paid close attention to regarding the fallout and failure of school. It's not necessarily to say all schooling is bad, but its relationship with familial roles that has changed, causing serious repercussions, serious problems. School would be less detrimental if it had the counterbalancing support of the traditional family as a moral and knowledge function. Think about this. Traditionally, we should be learning life skills. Traditionally, we should be learning how to get a job, how to build things, how to clean and cook, or how to, do your taxes. These types of things. And what's right, what's wrong, how to behave, how to be and do in the world. We should learn these things in the family. Traditional family has moral and knowledge function that is buttressed by the extra education learned in school. When balanced, this thing can work. But of course we know, and I say this here, we must teach children how to be and do in the world. Schooling infringes on that process. Economy, and this is why. Let's be real. This is why. Because economy and societal structures have deconstructed the overall stability and purpose of the family. So we understand socioeconomic issues, cultural change, industrial revolution, technological takeover, I'd say satanic and degenerate popular culture. A lot of these things have contributed to the breakdown of the family. Our progressive politics, progressive policies have broken and deconstructed the family such that it's no longer stable and it can't fulfill its role with regard to the moral, with regard to the knowledge, with regard to the being and doing in the world. So we should be going into school with a foundation already. But see, what's happened over time, and this has been since the Rockefeller and the Ford Foundation policies, which we're going to dig into tomorrow. We won't have time today because I got a lot of other stuff I want to cover. We don't got a whole lot of time left, by the way. We're already in 45 minutes. But yeah, we're going to touch on it all, trust me, because this is a very important topic. And we're getting ready to see a revolution in education. So I think it's so important to really take this deeper look into it, look back, look at the present, look forward a bit, right? But overall, we understand that there are many factors that have deconstructed the family. And I think this is what makes school so bad, is because now it infringes on that process, or in a sense, it replaces the family. It now becomes the parent. And this is one serious problem I had with certain statements in that clip, even though he said a lot of truth. There were several things he had mentioned that have nothing to do with the education system. These are things we should be learning at home. Hence why I think this could be used as propaganda, because it's not being fully honest. It's blaming everything on the school. It's blaming everything on education, when in fact, it's much deeper than that. We have a familial breakdown. We have a societal crisis we can't just blame on education. What are you going to do? Okay, take away schools, then what? See, it's not that easy. And of course, he had no solutions. right? We've heard this over and over, and these complaints over and over again, but there's no solutions. And not only that, well, their solution now is AI. Their solution now is digital transformation. But at the same time, they don't seem to understand the depth of the problem, at least not in some of these kind of surface breakdowns that we've seen here. So let's go into some of this. Let's go into the clip, and I have some timestamps, and I'll be going through certain parts and breaking them down. So I don't want to like say I'm blaming it on the parents or I'm blaming it on the family. It's the family's fault that the school has to pick up the pieces. My point is that's by design. They purposely deconstructed the family and put us in situations where we got to work all day, right? So they could take care of the kids and indoctrinate them. And yeah, there are some positives. I guess we can get some positives out of almost anything, but overall, it's a structure. It's a system and a structure that has been designed to uphold a specific type of civilizational infrastructure, a specific type of society that doesn't put humans first, doesn't put families first, definitely doesn't put God first, surely doesn't put learning and understanding and growth and development first. Everything becomes systematic, instrumental, utilitarian, right? We become machines. And I think the education system is a perfect example of these machines that begin with the Prussian model, which we'll dive into tomorrow. So first, number one, I just want to say the Prussian model, clearly, that's a big problem, and that's obedience. So our entire education system has been structured around the just simple concept of obedience. And then the idea of it's a business, right? It creates careers, profit, and public funding, right? It supplies food, learning materials, textbook industry as an example. Yeah, systemic stronghold. Good way to put it, Heidi. Very good. It's a form of childcare. 8 hours a day structured around work life of parents. It supports the function of the industrial and corporate system. It keeps the corporate system running. You keep the workers working, and you keep their kids busy. And it occupies the time of the student while the parents work. It literally occupies their time. And it feigns as if it's teaching them things that are important. Not to say you can't learn anything, but I believe that is not the real importance of this system. I believe really it is to create stability for an overall structure that doesn't have the people best interest in mind. Yeah, child care from 6 weeks old. There we go. There we go. And it's socialization and secularization. I want to make that clear. It's socialization, but it's also secularization, where it teaches us to be materialists. It teaches us Darwin and, Einstein and all of this false history. It shapes the way we see the world as this type of secular humanist is the best way to put it. It turns an entire population into secular humanists, even Christians, right? That might grow up in a Christian home, but when they go to school, they learn how to be a secular humanist, and they become double-minded. Right? And then they start to look at the education system and those in positions of influence and power as right, opposed to their family, right? And then people become atheists and agnostics. And it also teaches social responsibility. It's enculturating, right? It's an enculturation. It enculturates us through a false sense of history, right? Social sciences, math, etc. Not to say math isn't useful. We'll get into math in a minute here. And Western education tradition in itself, right? Scientism, materialism, utilitarianism. It's teaching us all philosophy, even though we don't realize it. Because it's teaching us a way to look at the world, a way to see the world, a way to interpret the world, a way to interpret meaning and truth, so-called, right? Because you don't learn truth in school. You only learn knowledge and facts. Teaching nothing of morality. Exactly, Jammy Get, which is, we should be getting this from our families, right? But again, back to this imbalance here. Now, There's a lot of good books on this stuff, right? Some are better than others. My favorite, I think someone I might have mentioned it in there. I think he has the best solution, that is, and that's Ivan Illich's work, Deschooling. His Deschooling, well, I think it's Deschooling Society, I think it's called. His work is phenomenal, I think, because he has a decentralist view. You know, we need to decentralize education and create smaller, like this idea of creating miniature schools that aren't necessarily centralized and controlled by the state, but by educators and intellectuals and people who know things, right? You don't necessarily have to go through some big system to teach people, right? You just have to have diligence, sincerity, some level of intelligence, and the ability to convey information in a way that people, you know, can learn from. I really, I think it's Deschooling Society. Excellent. Tiny little book, but man, it's just great solutions. And I agree with them. And then there's, of course, Gatto's work, which is good, but it's more of just a beating the system over its head with a bat kind of situation, right? But Gatto's work is still useful. Very useful. And then there's what's her name? Isarbite. I'm butchering her name. We'll actually look at some clips of her breaking some things down that I find interesting, and she tends to focus more on the influence of progressivism, which I like. But I'll be bringing up all these references as we dig through this, so you guys, if you want some actual reading to get into, I'll definitely supply those. But first, I just want to kind of get out some of my own personal ideas and then support them with others' work as usual. So enculturation, history, social sciences, the Western education tradition, and this is far from the more Western or scholastic view of, say, the medieval times, which was a lot more on point. I'd say this idea of classical education opposed to this new Rockefeller, Ford Foundation style of indoctrination. Very, very different case, focusing more on STEM, more materialist, opposed to having a more well-rounded education system like classical style, which would include the trivium, for instance, right, with logic, rhetoric, grammar, etc., philosophy, all of these foundational things, of course, upheld by a theology, by the way, because they definitely weren't atheists, right? A lot of them were Christians. They all believed in God, right? Even if a lot of them got that God, quote unquote, wrong. That was always the foundation of everything, from science, mathematics, academics, the academy in general was upheld by God, right? This idea of the metaphysic, etc. So that, I think, is a much better type of education. If we're going to be educating anyone at all, it has to be of that sort, right? But what we're dealing with now is nowhere near that. Right? The humanities are very important. They are. But we're getting a different sort nowadays, right? Especially with all the progressive stuff. Everyone learning about, identity and gender and race and all of this stuff. Not to say those things don't have any importance at all, but they have to have a foundation first. If you have no foundation in philosophy, or say the trivium, but you want to learn about gender and identity and all that stuff, that's cart before the horse, man. You're going to be so confused. You're going to think there's no such thing as gender. You're going to think that you're going to just fall for all of this wackadoo stuff because you have no foundation. And they don't teach foundation. They definitely don't. So anyhow, let's continue. So in classism, let's be real. There's a serious classism here. This speaks to the socioeconomic deconstruction of it all. Public schools are different from private schools. And I know private schools got their problems too, surely. But there's alternative types of schools that are actually pretty good. I've done some research, and they cost a pretty penny. Most people can't afford them. But there are some alternative schools out there that are attempting to do things differently in a way that I would say, okay, that's amazing, but who can afford that? You know what I'm saying? So there's a classism thing here, which puts it more on the families, more on us parents to do the homeschooling ourselves. And again, it's not easy for everyone to homeschool. And that's the pickle, right? And we no longer have these communities, close-knit, village-type communities where we can rely on our community to maybe help educate our children if we can't. You know, wouldn't it be great to have like a neighbor or someone close to you that had a small little school? You know, maybe 10 or 12 students. And there's multiple schools like this. I'm just saying hypothetically, what if this existed? Wouldn't that be great? You know, because it's keeping it in the community. You trust the people, you know the people, your kids play together. I mean, that's education right there, I would say. Like, especially if you can't do it yourself, but you have that opportunity to offer that to your child. I mean, that it's a beautiful thing. It does exist, but it's always not easy to afford, and it's not everywhere. But if we can move back to some of these ways of educating, I think it'd be great. And again, this is without the devices. This is without all the AI. This is without all that technology crap. I'm talking about, let's get back to pens and papers, pencils, papers. Let's start writing cursive. Let's start reading, you know, drawing, like having a multifaceted approach to education. And again, everyone's different, by the way. This is another point I wanted to make about schools. It's universalist. It attempts to create an averaging of people. This is Ford and Rockefeller's goal, to average out. It's like this averaging of a population. It's this generic generalization of the mind. It's crazy because it's not the case. People are different personality-wise, and their minds work different. People have different ways of learning. People have different talents and skills. These things need to be, I think, well, I'm sure these things need to be addressed when we consider education or teaching. And of course, when we look at education as one of these systems, right, as this civilizational infrastructure, business, and socialized childcare, we understand why they don't care about those things, because they just want to fit everybody into this damn building. They want to put everybody in a chair, fill them damn desks, right? Yes, most of us can't because of two-income households. Shout out to Worm. That's pretty much what I'm getting at. We all can't do that. And that's most of us. Right? So it's tough. That's why it's, if anything is going to change, it's going to be on us to create these new communities. And it's the long game. It truly is. It's not going to happen now. It won't happen tomorrow. And for many of us, it might not happen in our lifetime, unfortunately. But these types of cultural and social changes take time. They do. Let's see. Charter schools and private schools. Yeah, charter schools and private schools, very expensive. And they're not all great. You could find some decent ones, but it's pretty unrealistic for most people, unfortunately. It just is. But it isn't to say we can't do anything, but it's going to take work. That's the thing. It's going to take a whole lot of work, dedication, communication. All right. So anyhow, let me continue. So classism is a big deal, and universalism. Children have different needs and different minds. Children have different needs and different minds. If you're going to be educating, you have to consider that. You can't put everybody in the same room and expect everyone to learn at the same pace, and expect you to be able to create a type of curriculum that could be understood in this general sense. And I know that makes educating in general difficult, but what do you think educating minds is about? It's very difficult. It's not easy. They try to make an easy system that makes money and sustains an overall structure. And this is what we have. And overall, it replaces the family education. This is my biggest issue. It replaces the family education, because education should not just be school. In my personal view, it should not just be school. There's a part of education that comes from the home, right? And it's not just morality, right and wrong. Our fathers should be teaching us certain skills, and our mothers should be teaching us certain skills. Everyone should know how to cook because their mother taught them, or maybe their father, depending on who do the cooking. Sometimes it's both of us. And that's how it is in my house. We both cook. But we should be teaching our kids these skills, business, taxes, getting a job. All of these things that people complain about should be taught in school, should be taught by the parents. And that's being ideal. I know. But this is how it should be. You'll have more control and more influence on your child if this was the case. But again, it's a different time. I know kids are different. They're on the internet, social media, just rotting the minds. Got people going wild. It's crazy now. It's hard. A lot of this is kind of impossible because these technologies and this culture has just deranged the generation. It's hard to do this, but we can start with the young ones. If you got a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, listen, we're the future. All you parents out there, we are the future. We are designing the future right now. You have no idea how important you are. Everyone's important, okay? But you get what I'm saying. Those of us with young kids, we are building the future right now. Right? There's power in numbers. Okay? Now, so it replaces the family education, right? The family is where you are to learn life skills, morals, self-identity, and survival techniques, right? Survival techniques, how to survive in the world, how to be in the world, right? Aspects of identity. Like he was talking about depression. We're going to get to all of that. You should learn these things at home. The corporate labor world has seized the time, energy of parents, unfortunately, right? It has. Those of us that, wish we had more time to spend with our kids. The corporate labor world has seized the time, energy of parents. So even when we get the time, sometimes we don't have the energy. We might want to in our mind, like, damn, I want to, Daddy, will you play with me? I'm tired. I've been working all day. And, we push through, of course. But this is what a lot of people deal with, right? Time, energy. It's not just your time, it's your energy too. It's dismantling and displacing our time, energy, right? We ended up spending too much time and energy on things that we wish we could be using for our families. And then there's atomization, divide and conquer, right? Divide and conquer. So what it does is it dismantles and displaces familial roles and duties, right? So as we become atomized, that's separated, it displaces our roles as a family dynamic or as a family group, a unit. See, the family with extended family involved grandparents, we all play different roles and we all would have this interdependence. That doesn't exist anymore for the most part, depending on where you're at. I understand in the South, it's still pretty strong, but we're so separated, right? Oh, shout out to all the teachers, by the way. We got one here, Eli Contreras. I'm a second grade teacher. I try so hard to serve all the students the best I can. We would benefit from smaller classes to give individual attention. Time is short and resources are few, but we try. Exactly. See, this is the hardest part. I have family that are teachers as well, and friends that, that teach similar, elementary. And it's tough because your hands are tied. They really are. You're subject to the system. You're subject to the design, of course. You only could work with what you have. It's a very, very challenging situation. So we always have to remember that we can make all these complaints and poo-poo the system, but some of us are literally in it, trying to survive. So always have to be sensitive to this and understand. And also that it's not all bad, right? Teachers can change young children's lives. They can make imprints on them that last forever, right? Even if you don't have much to work with, even if you're stuck with a type of curriculum that isn't very fulfilling, right? Certain teachers can make a difference, actually, can take that, whatever that is they're working with, and turn it into something beautiful. And it is what it is, right? Most of us, I'd say the majority of people have no choice but to put their children in public school. So we have to do the best with what we have. And I think if we go into the situation with that attitude, good things can come of it. But if we just go into it like we don't care and we're just going to deal with it or, don't even pay any attention to it, I think that's dangerous because we all have to, I would say, contribute in some way that that suggests we're trying to improve the situation instead of just being fatalistic about it, because it's very easy to be that way. And I say class size is one of the biggest issues for sure, right? The larger the class, just the more chaos and the harder it is to really touch each individual child. They get less attention. And you understand how unique and different kids are. They need different things, different needs, and different minds, different personalities. It's really interesting and hard, right? So basically, as we all are atomized and separated, this divide and conquer situation where our family roles and dynamics and duties have been dismantled and displaced, it creates codependence, right? And learned helplessness, vulnerability, right? We're codependent on the schools now. All right? A lot of us rely on these schools, to teach our children and to house our children while we work. We're dependent on these industries now. And we don't need more education or better education. We need to reestablish the required learning and tutelage and responsibilities of traditional family life. That's my argument, is we could fix a lot of the things the education system is failing at with a stronger family dynamic. Easier said than done, okay? But I believe that is something that could really help quite a bit, is bringing back these familial roles and dynamics and duties and responsibilities as parents. We don't just put clothes and food and shelter out there for our children. We teach them things. We educate them. But what does that require of us? To be educated, to be able to teach, to know things. Right. So now we got to add a whole new thing to our plate. We got to be reading. We got to be learning. We got to be looking into things. We have to become teachers ourselves. Every parent has to become a teacher. I mean, how do you raise a kid without teaching them something? Right. We're all teachers to some degree. And I think if we could, identify with that a little deeper and try our best to find time to cultivate that ability in us, we could contribute to this whole thing and possibly change the scenario and have a bigger impact in our children's lives and on their minds. And again, we got a battle ahead, and we're not just dealing with the schools and all that happens there, but we're dealing with the devices. We're dealing with the social media. We're dealing with the popular culture. It's hard, but it's worth it. There we go. She smiles at the future. There we go. It's hard, but it's worth it. We need to invest in our children. And a lot of us are tired. We're tired. It's not easy. A lot on our minds, and we all don't deal with stuff the same way. Some of us better than others. But we could begin by just talking about it, mulling it over, throwing the ideas around, and trying to gain some level of confidence to start making some change. Now, let's get into this clip again. I want to have some timestamps. Okay, we're doing okay on time. I'll keep you guys, try to get this done in like 20 minutes. We'll go through these timestamps. Okay, I have it written down here. Okay, here we go. So today I want to focus on a few points he made that I think are very important because they speak to this idea. Okay. First one was 15 to 25. Okay. Now. All right.
No. When I finished, I didn't know how to do my own taxes, purchase a home, or apply for a loan. I didn't know a thing about investments, building credit, or getting a job.
Now, I think I've heard this so much, and I know there was a point where I might have made the same points. This idea of economics, and we should be learning how to do these things in school. We should be teaching our kids these things. Everything you just said, we should be learning in home early, as soon as we can understand the concepts. My method is as soon as I understand cognitively, or as soon as I am aware and sure that a certain cognitive level has been reached, I'm introducing concepts that I think they can handle. As soon as I get, and I do different little things to get the vibe, to understand when that is. I don't wait for the school to do it. I do it. Now, again, this takes time and practice and a whole lot of learning and reading yourself to have that kind of scenario. But at least this is what I do. So this idea of taxes, purchase a home, apply for a loan, right? This is wealth building, right? The concept of ownership, right? He had mentioned, I think at some point, investments and building credit. This is wealth, right? Getting a job. That's what I call home duty. That's the duty of the home. We should be teaching our children as early as possible, as soon as they can understand the concepts. And I'm not saying in some drill sergeant military like way. It has to be done in love, and I like to use a little comedy. It has to be done in a way that works with your child. You have to know your child, right? They're all different. They all have different ways of learning, and their interests are different. So only you would know how to do that. But this idea of taxes and applying for a loan, just the concept of wealth building and all of these things, we need to be teaching our children these things. Okay, so let's see. Now we're gonna go to, where is that? 10 or 6. Okay, so 227. 227. Okay.
Pointless pain, but it's also dim-witted because we get so much work, but they don't teach the time management skills to deal with it. See, in school,
we get so much work, but they don't teach us the time management to deal with it. Time management is a skill we should be learning at home. You know where I learned time management? I learned time management washing the dishes, cleaning my room, cleaning the backyard, picking up dog poop, doing whatever my dad told me I had to do, or whatever my mom told me I had to do. I learned time management and trying to get things done in an amount of time where I could do what I really wanted to do, whatever that was. Responsibilities, duties, and chores. Do kids still do chores these days? I had chores. Literal chores. I had responsibilities, duties in the home I had to do from a young age. Ain't no questioning it, getting out of that. No, it's just the way it was. So I learned time management just off the rip doing that. I didn't really need anybody to teach me it because I figured it out on my own. But again, we need to be teaching time management at home. So I like some of the stuff this guy is saying, but again, this is taking away from the family. This is forgetting that, wait a minute, doesn't the family play a role in education? So don't put it all on the school, even though the school has taken all the roles, which is why he's putting it all on the schools. But let's think a little deeper. Let's be a little more, introspective, if you will. What's really working here? It's not just that. So let's continue. All right, so now we go to 10. That's 411. All right.
That's fair.
No, okay.
But are you telling me metamorphic and igneous rocks are more important than self-care? If suicide is the third leading cause of death of ages 10 to 24, and Harvard studies suggest the biggest predictor for success is self-control and emotional health, then why the heck aren't we taught how to handle stress, bullies, or rejection? How about anxiety or depression? Skills we need for our entire lives. Bro, I don't even know how to cook. I'm honestly surprised I'm still alive.
Like that. I don't even know why they showed this scene, because he's in there with his mother. Like, clearly this is an image of the family, and he's like, I don't even know how to cook. I really was bothered by this point he made here, because the school should have nothing to do with anything he mentioned. What did he mention? Self-care? You mean to tell me we need the school to teach us about self-care? Well, today we do. Right, I'm being idealistic. I do understand that the family, for generations almost now, well, let's at least just say for a couple generations, families don't really provide these things as much as they used to. So now the schools have, and teachers, by the way, are given this responsibility, which is wrong, right? This should be the work of parents and families, teaching concepts like self-care and even like sexual education. What's some lady or guy teaching my child about sex? I'm sorry, that's my job. That's my job. I don't need some person, and I do understand that them being the teacher, they do have their own relationship that I respect. So let me not be too dismissive. I respect that relationship, but at the same time, there's boundaries. And personally, that's crossing a personal boundary. I will teach my children about those topics, because those topics play into our worldview and our faith and our moral fabric in a way that I don't think your school or the school system in general represents, because it's this type of circular humanist progressive thing. So I already know you're not going to convey this information properly. And the last thing I want is my child learning these things in that fashion. Let me do that. Okay? So this idea of self-care is another one of these. We should be learning these out of self-care. You learn that at a very young age. I'm talking like 6 or 7 or 8. And even before, when we think of, scraping your knee, or losing a favorite toy, right? Experiencing your first insult as a child and not really knowing how to handle it, right? Or possibly getting into a physical altercation with a young child and possibly struck, physically, and learning how to deal with that. We teach our children how to deal with that. This is how they learn self-care, or being extremely upset about something. We help them work through these emotions. We teach them how to work through these emotions. That's how they learn self-care at a very, very young age. Right? Just an example, some examples, and self-control, right? It's our duty to instill and engender these understandings into our children. Our child's self is developing. We have to assist in that development. Now, when they go to school, that's when they socialize with the other, with the in-group members, groups, etc. That's when they individuate. That's when they start to separate from the parent. That's when they start to step outside of the family and start to incorporate other views and other perspectives. So that's the danger of school. So if you have a strong foundation, I would think you'd have less to worry about in that regard. Hence, getting back to the importance of the family playing its role and counterbalancing that which happens at school. And again, these are just my views. I'm sure, if I'm wrong about something, I'm fine with that. These are just the way I'm seeing things, and I'm not telling anybody what they should do, even though I am kind of. But, I just got to get this stuff out of me, man. Because I saw this clip and it just kind of hit me. So, emotional health, right? He said stress, depression.
Skills we need for our entire lives.
Skills we need for our entire lives.
Bro, I don't even know how to cook. I'm honestly...
You should learn how to cook in the home. Moms, pops, somebody should be teaching you how to cook. You shouldn't have to learn how to cook at school. We had home ec. Do they still have home ec? Those that might have children of that age. I think that's what, like 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade, maybe home ec. Do they still have that? I had home ec. I loved it personally. But I knew how to get down in the kitchen by watching my mom. I knew how to operate everything. No one had to teach me anything. I felt very comfortable in that class. I knew how to chop everything, wash dishes. I mean, work a oven, work a stove top, very comfortable with the pans and all that. So it was just fun. But I couldn't imagine having to learn how to do those things at school or expecting school to teach you those things. And that's what I think that home ec process was all about, to step on the toes of the family. If you can read, you can cook. Well said. Well said. But yeah, we should be we should be learning how to cook. And it ain't like you got to be some chef or something. You just know how to get around. Know how to heat something up. Know how to make a little hot plate. Simple stuff. You know, understanding how to boil water, temperature, you know, what to cook with, what kind of pans to use. You know, learn about heat and all that. And you might get burnt in the process. You know, I've had a few burns. That's how you learn. Right? You got to burn yourself a couple times, or else you'll have no real confidence. You know, be more fearful and insecure. Practice, man. Practice everything. Yeah, he's way too old to be learning how to cook. I mean, I guess technically it's never too old, but I get the point, King Sir. Yeah, he should have been knowing how to get around in there. And again, this is fictional, right? SP says, my mom was a terrible cook. I barely learned anything, but I did learn how to learn and teach myself. Now the young ones have shorts and videos. It's so easy. Yeah, exactly. So I do have to, of course, remember everyone can't cook or grow up in families with parents that cook. I had friends where, you know, they was, you know, ordering in and, you know, doing a lot of box, microwave, TV dinner stuff. It was actually pretty common back in the 90s because it's convenience. And a lot of my friends, just like my parents, worked a lot, you know, so I get the convenience thing. And this started, what, in the 50s, you know, with canned foods and all of that, TV dinners and all that. We touched on that in the How Media Shaped a Generations documentary back in 2017. Kind of went through some of that history, you know, of how TV dinners not only messed up our ability to cook clean, whole foods, but also put us in front of the television. You know, the early indoctrination kind of thing, getting us comfortable in front of the TV screen for hours at a time, and even while we eating, right? Because before, it was more normal to eat at the table with your family, face to face, where we discuss life and goings on, right? Yeah, and YouTube, you can teach you. I've learned so much from YouTube. It's amazing, right? So yes, all technology isn't bad, okay? And he mentions this too at the end about how grateful he is for YouTube, and I am too. Not just for learning, but even being able to do this work. So yeah, I mean, YouTube has been definitely an amazing an amazing service, right? We can learn so much from this thing. And what's cool about it is it's just regular people for the most part, aside from the, you know, the influencers and a lot of the propaganda on YouTube. Most of us are learning from just everyday people like you and me. And that's awesome. You know, I love that because some of us have things to share and we could share them with each other. And I've always really appreciated that concept with this website, YouTube. Really cool. You could literally learn anything. I mean, skills and how to do stuff. It's priceless, honestly. It really is. Yep, me too, Carmen. I can't sit here and say I didn't do it because I did too. And it was a new thing, right? It was cool, man. It was fun. Not all the time. My mom cooked most of the time, but we had some. You know, we had them in the freezer, you know. And, you know, us kids, we love the bad stuff. So sometimes we'd rather eat something you could warm up in the microwave than a fresh cooked meal. Unfortunate. But that's how children are. You know, they always want the bad stuff. Stuff that's not good for you. Now, let's see where we at. Now let's go to this math point he makes here. Because I want to make a point quickly about that. That was 35 to 56. Okay, let's see. Perfect. All right, here we go.
But luckily, they did teach me some important skills like factoring trinomials and how mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I'm so happy I remember the Pythagorean theorem because it helped me a lot. Okay, I'm lying. Let me stop. Because all the stuff they taught me, truthfully, I forgot. Mom, remember when
I think that's where I wanted to stop it. Let's see. 57. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, and I could agree with this. Personally, I wasn't crazy about math anyways. I didn't see the point of it. I thought it was a waste of time. So I never had any interest in it. But I do get the fact that we don't use a lot of this stuff unless you're working in some type of STEM industry where it's very useful. Math is useful, and it has a lot of meaning and purpose in the world. It's how we build everything, right, with some degree of mathematics. But I do understand this view that everyone shouldn't have this stuff shoved down their throat. But let me make a different argument, okay? So the good thing about learning math, now this doesn't mean you got to go to calculus, right? I'd say, I mean, as long as you get to basic algebra, I think that's good enough for the world. Not necessarily of any use in the real world, but for me, I look at math, especially in these certain developmental stages of life, say between, 12 and 18, is that it's good for the mind as far as logic, conceptualization, working memory, right? And it offers up the opportunity to interact with a higher order or higher order forms of thinking, right? It forces us to push our thinking to this different type of form that's very formulaic, very logical, but I think it adds something to the way that that person's mind works from that point forward. It creates new neural pathways. It offers up a whole new experience of conceptualization that I think is valuable over time in ways that we might not even realize. Overall, what I'm getting at is learning at least a degree of math early in life does help cognitively, does assist in an extended way of thinking, right? Now, the problem with math is it's obsessed. It's hyper worshipped, right? It becomes an indoctrinating thing where they want everyone to be a STEM student, and we get wrapped up in this materialist, scientific kind of worldview where math is God, right? And we get this from, the push for physics, right? When we think of Einstein and, Skinner, and pretty much a great philosopher that represents this too, one being White or Bertrand Russell. Right, these guys that worship mathematics, et cetera, and it's gotten us to a point where we are today, right, where we want to turn people into computers. Okay, so there's definitely a bad place with math, but I think there are some good things too. So now let's go to this next clip here. 25 to 35. I think we already did that. Let's see.
Own taxes, purchase a home, or apply for a loan. Okay. I didn't know a thing about investments, building credit, or getting a job. I graduated at the top of my class, and what did I have? This fancy diploma to sit at home with my mom.
So this point here about, all I got was a piece of paper, and this is a big argument. We've all made it at some point, it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't have any real meaning. It's the Masonic, head garb and all of this, the brick in the wall, all of these points. Though a lot of this stuff could have some relevance, it is a bit superficial schooling, for sure, definitely, but it doesn't mean it's meaningless and useless, right? And I think this speaks to the ideas I was saying earlier about how it helps shape our identities and our ability to socialize, and we get to test our sociability, right, on others, right? We get to test out how to socialize, and we grow as individuals doing this with peers, right? So there are elements of school that basically what I'm getting at is school is not just about getting some degree. It's not just about, so-called education. There is a social component that is good. Not necessarily the bad socialization that wants to indoctrinate us as worker bees, because of course we're aware of that, but there is some good to the social aspect of school as well, because if we didn't have it, And now I'm not saying if we didn't have the system we have now, but let's just say we had no type of social interaction at all, we'd be in trouble. If we never left our homes, you know, and everything stayed like it used to be at certain points in history, I think we'd be worse off, I'd say, at least socially, more isolated, right? So it's nuanced. It's good and bad, obviously. Clearly it's indoctrination, but there are some social development skills and experiences that we have that I think are important. Okay, so I think we got through all those clips I wanted for today. We'll continue, and we'll go into Rockefeller and Ford Foundation and the policies and the history, and then we'll be diving into the Prussia model, and we'll be juxtaposing that to our system now, as well as what Elon Musk has set up, because I believe he is using this failure of education, this clear indoctrinating program we've all been experiencing, as an opportunity to bring in this new type of robotic, machinic, artificial intelligence education that's just going to get our children to form relationships with AI and take us further away from our familial dynamics. So if the counterbalance of familial duty and responsibility is actually what we need, fascinating how that has nothing to do with Elon Musk's solution to our education problem, right? Clearly, it's a human scale problem that requires a human scale solution, which is familial duty and responsibility and interactivity, dynamics, etc. His solution is technological. Oh, we're going to put you guys in front of more screens to the point where they eventually want to connect our children's brains to the damn things, right? Sick stuff. Now, let's see here. Okay, we went through this. I'll read it again. Aside from structural, academic, and historical problems within education, a key factor is that it has subsumed many important duties and roles of the familial dynamic. School would be less detrimental if it had the counterbalancing support of the traditional family as a moral and knowledge function. We must teach children how to be and do in the world. Schooling infringes on that process. Economy and societal structures have deconstructed the overall stability and purpose of the family. And here I found these two tweets that I thought were interesting. So the first one was here. It said, regarding the younger generations not being able to find mates and socialize, or at least romantic situations. It says, this is very common. What has been called the mating crisis may be best understood as a crisis of socialization. It isn't just a failure to form romantic relationships, but a failure to form same-sex friends and peer groups, which is something we've talked about in the past. It's not just dating and mating that's a problem. It's hard to even make good, strong relationships with friends that are enduring and last for years and possibly a lifetime. It's a different type of socialization now because of the virtual world, social media, and this kind of detached, depersoned way of interacting solely digitally. And then this response I thought was really good. Yeah, we're in Valencia, Spain right now. Valencia, Spain. The response was cool. It says, you have to teach people how to be people. And when I constantly say we have to teach our children how to be and do in the world, this is, in a sense, what I'm getting at. You have to teach children and young people how to be people. They don't know how to be people. They learn how to be people from us, right? Now, when they get into the social situations like school, like extracurricular activities, they learn how to be from other people. Let's try to be the people that teach our people, or let's try to be the people we teach our children how to be, opposed to other people, right? Hence that foundation, that strong foundation first. It says, it turns out that absent dads, doped up single moms, and computer screens are all bad at this. Now, it's I'd say this point here is a bit harsh, but there's some truth here, right? I would have used different words, but sure, right? Let's say unstable familial dynamics, right? Unstable familial dynamics, whether that be drugs, absent dads, or whatever, unstable family dynamics, and this influx and preoccupation with computer games or let's just say computer screens or devices in general are bad at this. They are. They're bad at teaching people how to be people. And what I want to add to this is school as well, right? School is bad at teaching people how to be people if the families aren't doing that first, is the point. We shouldn't rely on schools to teach our children how to be people. And I'm not saying any of you do that or we do that, but in general, schools have been put in a position by the state to be this indoctrinating force that takes control of all these things and supplies all of these ways of learning and educating. And it's wrong. You want to teach kids, about sex. You want to teach kids about depression and, identity and all of this. No. That's what the family should be doing. Unfortunately, we are in a situation where it's not as easy based on the deconstruction, atomization of our families. But listen, these schools and now the computer is being, let's say, integrated with the schools. So now it's not just the school dynamic, but it's now the computer, it's the AI, the screens, the devices now being integrated with the school. That can't end well. That can't end well, guys. But again, we can do something. We can do something today. And if enough of us do it, we can make a serious change in the future generations by taking control of the generations now. And the only people that are there to do it are as parents. That's it. It's really our responsibility. And it's as simple as that. And it isn't to say it's our fault. That's not the case. But I look at things from the position of I got to do something about it. I'm not waiting for anybody else. I'm not sitting here blaming it on anybody else. I don't care what's happened in the past. I have to do something about this. And it's on us, right? So tomorrow we're going to continue this, jump into the pressure model. Got a bunch of stuff to talk about, Rockefeller, all of these things, breaking down the history. And it's crazy because you see how much, whether it be the Ford Foundation or the policies of Rockefeller, mixed with the LBJ, Great Society programs, how they all came together. And tomorrow we're going to kind of tie it all together, right? From LBJ and the incentivizing single mothers to not get married and have children, to collect economic support, mixed with this education system change. It all happened around the same time, 60s, 70s. It's such an interesting history. And we'll be looking at that and we'll be synthesizing that and tying it into where we're at now and people's complaints now, but also looking forward to seeing how they plan to solve this problem. Fascinating times. Fascinating times. But again, who's going to solve it? Another one of these damn elites. Another one of these damn billionaires, right? Every single time we go from the billionaire Rockefellers to the billionaire Muskrat. Thank you guys for being with me. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace and blessings to you all.
Please do not forget to tip your server. Check out the merch shop for fire gear, links in the description. We appreciate your continued support. All praises to the Most High. appreciate your continued